Hi, this is Andre. Looperlative is a company based out of California that has been manufacturing boutique live looping technology since the mid-2000s. Several years back, they released the original version of the LP2 mini looper, and just in the last year or so, they have re-released the pedal with a whole host of upgrades and revisions. So the one that we're looking at in this video is that newest version. The technical term for the newest version is the LP2 Gen D. Now, this pedal is kind of two devices in one. You can access a lot of functionality just through the onboard controls, and it has a lot of flexibility both in terms of different types of looping effects, like half speed and reverse and replace and that kind of thing. If you use the onboard controls, you can also access two different loops. You can have them playing one after another and switch back and forth. You can also have them playing simultaneously. You can have them synchronized. You can have them different lengths. So there's a lot of possibilities to be had just using the built-in controls. If you dive into MIDI control, then there's a whole nother level of functionality that opens up for the LP2. A lot of these functions are only available in the LP2 if you use MIDI control, and a lot of them come from the LP1, which is the original Looperlative product, which is a rack mount unit. In this video, we're just going to be looking at controlling the LP2 using the onboard controls. We're not going to get into MIDI, partially because MIDI is a very big subject with the LP2, and I want to cover that in a separate video, but also because there's an awful lot you can do just using the onboard controls with the LP2. I was not very familiar with the LP2 until very recently, and I've been really impressed with how deep and wide-ranging it is. This is one of the more information-packed videos I've done for a long time. There's a lot of different stuff covered, and a lot of different demonstrations of various things, so let's get into it. Alright, we currently have no loops. The status light is blue, solid blue, which tells us that there's nothing in the Looperlative right now. So record and overdub is going to get us going with an initial loop. Press it a second time, you immediately go straight into overdub, which is great for making continuous kind of texture. If you press it again, you are no longer in overdub. Play on top and not have it added into the loop. And the status display tells you what's going on. If it's solid green, that means it's playing back. If it's blinking green, that means you're in overdub mode. And also notice that whether you're overdubbing or not, you get that quick blue light. And that shows you the start point of the loop. So that blinks right at the beginning of the loop, gives you an indicator of where you're at. Play and stop, stops and plays the loop. Always retriggers from the start. This also has a secondary function. If you have the loop stopped and you do a long press of record overdub, that erases your loop. So if you want to get rid of your current loop, you can't really use record overdub because that's going to keep toggling between overdubbing and not overdubbing. So play stop, bring it to a stop, long press of record overdub, that gets you into erasing the loop. Let's make a new loop. So let's check out feedback. This expression pedal is plugged into the rear feedback jack on the LP2, and feedback will cause the loop to decay over time if you bring it down, but it's not just an auto fade out feature, as I always say. So I'm going to play new stuff. And you can hear that it's fading out quickly because we have a fairly low feedback level. If I bring it back up, it's going to stay at 100% repetition. And then if I bring it back to an intermediate level, we can evolve the content of the loop. So old layers are fading out, but the new stuff is at full volume. Bring it back up to 100%. Now we've got a completely different loop. Feedback works whether or not you're in overdub. So right now we're not overdubbing. Now we are. Now we're back up to 100% feedback. It doesn't really do the impose volume fades within a loop kind of thing. So if we try doing that, you get that kind of hard cutoff, but that's not a big deal. That's a pretty obscure technique. I think Matthias Grob and I are the only two people I know of who do it, which is not a humble brag. It's kind of a humble brag, but now feedback is down. And we're still overdubbing, as you can see. And if you bring feedback all the way down, you just get one repetition. Alright, let's look at effect 1 and effect 2. Any of these left-hand column functions can be assigned to effect 1. Any of the right-hand column functions can be assigned to effect 2. So in order to assign those, we need to enter a configuration mode. The easiest way to do that is to press the configuration button on the back of the LP2. And now we get those blinking lights. So you can scroll through the different options. And let's say, for right now, I want effect 1 to be half speed. Same thing with effect 2. Scrolls through all the different possibilities. And let's say we want that to be reverse. Long press of record overdub. All right, now those have been assigned. So we'll record something really briefly. And now that puts us into half speed. And what's always fun with half speed is if you can change the speed in mid-overdub, which you absolutely can. You get those octave jumps in the middle of an overdub. And effect 2 is reverse. And you can also reverse in the middle of an overdub. This is just tapping the reverse button repeatedly. Now we're back up to full speed. Let's check out some of these other functions. I'm going to close overdub. And if I do a long press of record overdub when the loop is not stopped, that puts us into configuration mode as well. So this is great if you want to be changing stuff on the fly and don't want to have to reach down and push buttons. Let's check out replace, one of my favorites. And let's do regular replace for right now. And let's do replace 1/16 on effect 2. Very nice. So long press gets us out of here. So on effect 1 we have regular replace, or you could also call it unquantized replace, which is just going to override the loop. It overrides the content with whatever is happening for as long as you hold it down. It's a momentary function. If you're not playing anything, then it punches holes of silence. Here it comes. There we go. So it's that kind of idea. Now replace 1/16 is a quantized replace function, and this is set up so that it will automatically take your loop, divide it into 16 subdivisions, and then map the replace function to the nearest of whatever those 16 subdivisions happens to be. So let's listen to that. And you can hear it's already got that step sequencery, mechanically perfect quantized sound to it. Let's do that a little more. And of course, you can overdub on top of this if you're so inclined. Now, as you can see, there are some pretty unusual replace quantization values to be had here. So 8th quantization, 16th quantization is relatively straightforward. 1/7 quantization is darn obscure. So let's record an initial loop. Let's do a long press to get into configuration editing. Let's check out 1/7 replace. That's going to divide the loop into 7 slices, and let's also check out 1/9 replace. All right. Long press gets us out. So we're going to divide it into 7 equal slices. There we go. Just kidding. Let's do 1/9. Whew. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 9. There we go. There we go. And I'm curious, let's see what replace 1/64 sounds like. I'm gonna get rid of this because it's a little much. Overdub is open, feedback has cleared the queue. I'm gonna close Overdub and we're gonna hear 1/64 replace. That is pretty short. I totally believe that those are 64th subdivisions of the loop. I'm just recording something empty right now, and I deliberately want this to be free time because we're going to demonstrate a really cool and unusual function. All right, so long press gets us into configuration mode. We're going to go to Retrigger Random. What this will do is restart the loop from a random point within the loop each time. If we add a little more, I think it'll become more readily apparent. All right. I think that's beautiful. I am going to assign effect 2 to reverse, just so we can get rid of some of the more percussive aspects of the attack. There we go. There we go. I think that's great. Now let's talk about multiple loops. If you're using just the front controls here, the Looperlative will let you have 2 loops at the same time. And in order to access those, we're actually going to go into a different feature set. So we're going to do a long press of the configuration button. And you can see the red and green blinking light on status. Now what we're doing here is changing this stuff. So what we've been in so far has been the default value for this stuff. This has been the functions as you see listed. You can access alternative banks of functions that have slightly different things available to you. And what we're going to do now is switch to an alternative bank that is very similar to the one we've been using, with one exception. This is going to let us switch back and forth between loops in a lot of different really cool ways. So let's record an initial loop. Now long press takes us into editing, and now retrigger once becomes a switch function, and effect 2 continue becomes a change loop function. So now we're out of there. And now if I press effect 2, you can see that a blue light came on the lower status light. That represents the second loop. Now, we haven't recorded anything in the second loop yet, and let's say that we want to have something that is totally synchronized to this first loop. If you want to do that, you press play, stop. Now we immediately have a brand new second loop that is the same exact length. Close Overdub, and then if I do play stop on this, we just silence that, but the first layer is still sounding. And we can go the other way. We can use switch loop. Now we have loop 1 selected. And now we're just hearing the overdubs that we did on loop 2 and not the stuff on loop 1. So effect 1 has switch other track set up on it, and this will let us immediately record 2 contrasting loops, one after the other, and then immediately bounce back and forth between them. So I'm going to record 2 chords, one on each loop. So now we have that E minor chord, that first one on loop 1. And that is going to loop over and over until we switch to loop 2. Now it's going to wait until the downbeat. And now we're just playing loop 2. And now that's just going to stay on that chord until such time as we press this switch again. And that immediately takes us back to the first loop. So this is great if you want to have contrasting sections that don't necessarily repeat exactly the same way each time. So you could have your E minor going there forever, then switch back for the second chord just one time, then go back to the first chord. We could sit on the second chord for a long time and let it keep going as long as we want to stay there. One more time, and then we can go back to the first chord. What we can also do, this is a little nutty, but you can actually have both of those loops play at the same time. And to do that, we're going to use loop select. So now we have loop 2 ready to go. We're going to press play. And now we're hearing both chords at the same time. And they're both 2 different lengths, so it's not going to repeat the same way each time. You're going to get these 2 asymmetric loops bouncing against each other in all kinds of crazy ways. And then if we want to go back to just one loop at a time, now the switch button again puts us just back to loop 1 or loop 2. This will also work even if you don't initially record stuff with loop switching. So let's say we do something synchronized. Close Overdub, go to loop 2, we want to record something. No, let's not record this in sync. Let's have this be arrhythmic. So you can hear that this is not synchronized. Close overdub. And now, even though we built these up in the conventional way, we can switch between them, having just one play using the switch button. So that's just the first loop. That's just the second loop. And bouncing back and forth. And again, if we want them both to play at the same time, select the other loop that's not currently playing and press play. I really like the asymmetrical possibility, so let's do one more thing. Let's do kind of a fake 80s King Crimson thing. So that's our first loop. That's our second loop. Let's try playing them both at the same time. And let's go a little nuts. So we're going to go into configuration mode. We're going to change effect 1 to half speed. We're going to change effect 2 to quarter speed. Let's see what on earth this sounds like. Let's keep half speed on effect 1, and let's go back to switch loop on effect 2 so that we can change the speed on either loop. Alright, we're going to change loops from what we have been doing. There we go. Now let's change the other one as well. Now they're both in half speed. Adrian Ballou and Robert Fripp walk into a bar. The collection of functions exactly as listed on the faceplate of the LP2 is what's called the traditional set. When we switched into doing multiple loops and we changed functionality in order to accommodate those multiple loops, that was accessing what's called the alternate set. There's a third set called the Bill Walker set that has a lot of different types of functionality that are not available in either of the two sets that we looked at in this video. A lot of the functions in the Bill Walker set are kind of previews or hints of things that are accessible in more detail through MIDI. The set is named after guitarist Bill Walker, who is based out of Santa Cruz and is a tremendous player and has had a lot of involvement with the LP2. He's one of the best people to go to as far as demonstrations of what a power user can really do with the LP2. He has a lot of great performance videos that I'm going to link to, and anybody who's interested in finding out more about the LP2 should really check out his stuff. The LP2 is kind of a family affair as well, because in addition to the contributions that Bill Walker has made, a lot of its original design concepts came directly from his brother Rick Walker. Rick is originally a drummer. He plays pretty much every instrument you can imagine, and plays a lot of found sound things that are not traditional musical instruments, but he still makes great music with them. Rick tends to be a bit of a sonic explorer when it comes to his music making, and certainly with his looping. And a lot of the more unconventional functionality on the LP2, like being able to retrigger the loop from a random separate point each time, or some of the unusual quantization values for the replace functionality, definitely bear Rick's influence. And anyone who's familiar with Rick's visual presentation will probably recognize the purple metallic chassis as having his signature to it as well. So Bill and Rick are both tremendous musicians with very different types of musical aesthetic personalities, and that's not just an interesting piece of trivia, because one of the things that has repeatedly struck me as I've gotten to know the LP2 is that I feel like it sits very comfortably in between the song structure looping school and the sound design world of looping. A lot of hardware loopers seem to sit in one or the other camp. They either seem to be geared towards really crazy sound design and manipulation and doing crazy things to the sound, or they seem to be geared primarily towards getting a lot of loops happening and switching between them and being able to recreate song-type structures simultaneously. So in that regard, I find the LP2 really unusual in that it has one foot comfortably in each of those worlds. You can ignore all the crazy sound design stuff and just use it as a song-style looper and get a ton of functionality out of it in terms of being able to create contrasting sections very quickly and switch between them smoothly. If you're more into the mad scientist stuff, then you can also go into some very esoteric sound design stuff, much of which we didn't cover in this video because it's only available through MIDI, but you can do things like time stretching and melodic repitching and all kinds of great things that we're going to be looking at down the road. So I had never really sat down and done serious work with a Looperlative unit until very recently, and I've been really impressed with the LP2 and really struck at how deep it can go in a lot of different directions, and I'm definitely looking forward to digging into it more in videos to come. As always, thank you for tuning in. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.